Yeah, good morning. Good morning, Melen. Saikila Melen, my very good brother. Good morning to everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you find yourself in the world. Today we'll speak on much more of an intellectual topic. We'll not be delving into emotional issues. We'll be talking much more intellectual. So we'll be very calm, steady, and focused. And for those who are wise, they would get the information. I decided to take on this topic after a very, very, very long deliberation because I believe it's very important that all of us should know what is going on in neighboring La Republique, and exactly if what is going on in neighboring La Republique can have an impact on the debate going on in Ambazonia, the quest for independence. It is a very, very pertinent issue. It is something that every single Ambazonian should know about, and why there is often a term called meddling in international politics, meddling in elections. At this particular juncture, let me start by greeting some few people. Marcel Sam, yes, salute, good morning. Yimbul Emmanuel, great, good morning, that's a very good friend. Abraham Mane, no, that one a lot of public agents, good, Abraham. John Silva, oh, I love that guy, John Silva. Yes, of course, good. John Silver says, therefore, it's not just for any Tom and Dick. Yeah, of course, this particular edition is not for any Tom and Dick. Don't mistake the word Dick. This particular edition is not for any Tom and Dick and Harry. Of course, this particular edition is only for people who are very wise and very smart to understand what we are discussing about. So if you have any questions, drop your questions. Let me start right away. I'll go straight to the point. Of course, within the past 2 weeks, we've been hearing a lot about the elections that have stolen the debate in the independence quest for Ambazonia. The elections in neighboring La Republique, they went on very, very well. Literally, most people voted Camto. That is not a propaganda, that is a fact. The polls showed that Camto, the incumbent, Camto was winning hugely, and Camto actually did win. He won in the Grand North, that means the 3 northern regions in neighboring La Republique. He won in the West, where he comes from, he's a Bamileke. He won in Littoral, where he also has a very strong base. Literally, among all the presidential opposition candidates, Camto led with a yawning gap. The incumbent, the challenger, or the defender rather, Paul Biya, had been in power, or has been in power for 36 or nearly 40 years. He has been in a centralized government system for more than half a century. That means more than 50 years Paul Biya has been in power. He became the prime minister of La République du Cameroon at the age of about 29 or so, or 30. He became the prime minister. So, and he has not given, of course, the forum for every youth to exercise their civil rights and political liberties. Well, that is far off the debate. Paul Biya thinks, or he thought, that he's going to win this particular election just with a single campaign. He spends most of his time in Switzerland. And of course, because he spent most of his time in Switzerland, his political opponents took on the advantage that Paul Biya has been missing to capitalize on their gains and make a swift victory. And just to give you a heads up, the election results were already prepared about 2 weeks ago. And they were being rehearsed by the leader of the Constitutional Council in neighboring La Republique. So the candidates were already known. They already made the results. But just at the nick of time, just the day before the elections, or 2 days before the elections, there was a political coalition. So those particular results that were tallied, of course, they had to be changed because La Republique did not anticipate for a political coalition. So you can figure out for yourself, if you have a data set and you have several variables, and then you take out one of those variables, or you take out one of the columns, of course, you have to change the whole results all over. So at the end of the day, how would they factor in the fact that, okay, this candidate was not there and we gave him this particular percentage? They have to redo all their statistic to come out with a number that will suit the population. However, as smart as they are, Camto, being a professor of law, we also have Akaremuna, being a jurist and who has been the vice president of Transparency International. These two people quickly morphed into a political coalition. And with someone who has a very, very huge reputation like Akaremuna to join Camto, it means there is something in the offing which is ready to seat for the interest of La Republic citizens. Now, this is exactly what happens. Akaremuna joins Kamto. If Akaremuna joins Kamto with his heavy weight, he doesn't join as Akaremuna. He comes with his followers, and he comes with all his connections that he has amassed over the years, from being the vice president of Transparency International to wherever he is today. He comes with all those his connections and all those his promises that his connections promised him, you know. So he comes to join Akaremuna, who is already well established, Kamto, who is already well established and well connected. These are two huge forces against La Republique du Cameroon. What we expected was that newcomers, or everyone anyway who was a newcomer in the elections, the opposition candidate, what we expected was that Cabral Libri and the other people would join Kamto, flank their weight, and give a single first past the post victory, which is very huge. Now, these two little boys, I'll call them little boys, forgive my words, little boys, Cabral Libri and Joshua Osi, they did not join, of course, let them stay there. But these two people, these two seniors, had a heavy weight to push Mr. Biya down. Of course, this is a fact. We don't look at the elections barely by looking at the selectorate or the electorate. We look at those who are behind the elections. Now, this is where the game becomes tricky. They successfully won the election with a landslide victory. That is a fact. Now, you're operating in a dictatorship. A dictatorship warrants that you don't announce the results of the elections before the election, the official in charge announces it. Okay, that is fine. Everyone knows that. You don't announce the results of the elections. But here we are living in a world what we call new media, old politics, or new media, old regime. The new media is the social media. You can never ever dictate to the social media that you don't announce the results of the elections. People literally had their phones on them. People were reporting the results. People were reporting every little thing that was passing by. And so you cannot control that. So the social media went on to announce the results of the polls. And of course, we've been monitoring it. We've been seeing everything. And Ambazonia was meddling into the affairs of La Republique du Cameroon, because La Republique du Cameroon also meddles into our own affairs. So this is a simple fact. We want La Republique du Cameroon out of Ambazonia, and so they have been meddling in our own internal affairs. It is time for us to also meddle into their own internal affairs, because La Republique du Cameroon in Ambazonia is a problem. So Ambazonia in La Republique du Cameroon should also become a problem. Now, let's keep that aside. This is exactly what happens. Kamto quickly and swiftly went on to announce his presidential victory just the day after the polls. Now, this is a very, very tactical point of view. Very tactical, very smart, very strategic, because you're dealing here with a dictator. A dictator who has already announced and already, in fact, his victory is already common knowledge. That is for sure a fact. He's the law. You're dealing here with a dictator where there is no rule of law. The rule of law basically means that how you constrain power. You're dealing here in a dictatorship where there is no separation of power. That means there is no independent executive, independent legislative, independent judiciary. You're dealing here in a system, in a dictatorship system, where the executive overrides the judiciary and the legislative, which means Mr. Biya is the alpha and the omega. Now you have someone who has just won the elections. He should normally be afraid to even go to the public to announce that he is the president. But here are the stakes. He goes, he faces the public, he announces that he is the president in Yaoundé, and the population supports him. Everyone literally supports him, because if you look at opinion polls, people are for Kamto. People have been celebrating his victory from left to right, from north to south, from east to west. Perfect. Now he announces that he is the president. Mr. Biya stays silent, but his surrogates, Atangan Jipol, Yang Philemon, Famindongo, and the rest, they go on an offensive. They go on a defensive, rather. They are trying to defend why Paul Biya is the president by indirectly telling the opposition candidate that he is not the president. So if he is not the president, who is the president? Of course, they are announcing that Mr. Biya is the president. Then they go further to violate the law by saying that he is not the president. Of course, it means that you're already announcing who is the president. So you're violating the law indirectly. You go further with an empty head to announce, to tell a professor of law, a seasoned jurist, that he is violating the law. What law in the Republic of, in La République du Cameroon? There is no law there because it's a stateless society. It is a society where there is no rule of law. It is not even a democracy. So there is no law. It is a failed state where the institutional mechanisms have failed. So literally, it's a public bazaar. It's a distribution bazaar where anyone can do anything and feel free. But here is the stake. Kamto announces that he is the president. Great. The people flank him with support because Mr. Biya is a traditionalist and he always plays with time, and he thinks he will not announce because he can always rig the elections and people are afraid of him. Kamto goes on in Yaoundé to announce it, reminiscent of what Frundi did in 1992. But Frundi, however, did not announce it. That was a mistake. Kamto wins with a majority first past the post victory and announces it. Frundi himself did not announce it to the public. It was the people who were assuming and who, of course, knew it was common knowledge that Frundi had won the elections. But here are the stakes. If Kamto goes on to announce that he is the president, there are two things he must be ready to face. Number one, you are living in a dictatorship where the president is the Alpha and the Omega and has the military. You are living in a dictatorship where the president will use every measure to crack you down, especially after when he has been announced the president. So there are two things running in Kamto's mind. Number one, it is either he goes on a self-exile if Mr. Biya is eventually announced the president. Or number two, he should be preparing a military strategy to fight Mr. Biya and defend what he announced. Mr. Kamto, at this particular point, I may not know, I have never spoken to him, I don't even know him. If I see his face now, I don't know him. But there are two things running in my mind as an analyst here. Number one, I strongly believe that there are other presidents in the world, elsewhere, who have called Kamto to appreciate his coming to power. There are people, as we speak, from the backstage who know Kamto and who hate Biya, who have called Kamto to say, hey, Mon President, I want to tell you this, I have your back. In any situation, military or financially, I will support you. I want you to defend your stance. You are the president of Cameroon and I want Biya out. I believe there are presidents. If I was the one and I had a friend who is against an enemy, I will call you at the background to say, hey, look, I have your back, okay? You stand strong, and in case you need my financial or my military support, I am ready to feed you with them. And we have to take that man out. That is for sure a fact. Kamto did not simply announce the results of his victory. He is announcing exactly what will happen in the upcoming days. So prepare. If you are in La République du Cameroon, prepare for the worst. Number two, Kamto knows that Mr. Biya will kill him at any time, and he is also ready to leave at any time. So Mr. Biya has already put a clear fight between Kamto and himself. So be ready for a very, very rough day or rough days in the days ahead. Number three, Kamto is not only backed by himself and all his strings, he is also backed by Akere Muna, who is a well-known jurist, international jurist, and who has well-known collections, especially with Transparency International and all its implementing partners. Akere Muna deals with a lot of presidents, and they all support him. Akere Muna is more of a Democrat, and Paul Biya is a dictator. So Democrats will often ally with Democrats, and dictators will ally with dictators. So Akere Muna comes with the strings of power to push Mr. Biya out, and this is a huge victory. What I expected to see was that Cabral Libri and this other guy, Joshua Osi, will flank their support behind these two candidates, especially at this time. It is never too late to have a post-political coalition. Post-election political coalition. It is never too late. This was the exact moment when we had to see these two leaders being supported by other presidential opposition candidates who failed to meet the target. We expected that Joshua Osi would say, yes, of course, we endorse the presidency of Kamto. We expected that Cabral Libre would clip his wings to say, I endorse it. But anyways, that is aside. The youth, of course, support Canto and they voted Canto, and that is the majority. They should keep their ego, or if they don't want to keep it, they should stay by themselves. But no one is looking at them. The attention is now on Canto. But here is the hook. Prepare for the worst, because Canto is left with two main options. I strongly believe that Canto has a military option on its table as we speak. And number two, I also strongly believe that Canto knows that the option of going on self-exile is off his table. This is somebody who has worked with the Biya regime for a very long time. Canto has worked with the Biya regime for an unlimited number of years. And he resigns on a clean streak of record that he has no misappropriation, nothing, no corruption and whatever. If Mr. Biya had something to pin down Canto with, he could have done that before the elections. Canto is as clean as anything. I'm not supporting him, of course. I support Ambazonia, but I will give you the reason why the impact of La Republic elections has to affect us and why we have to meddle into the elections and what we can gain from there. So all what I'm explaining to you is only a background. We are coming to the crux of the matter. Now, this is exactly what happens. How do Ambazonians come in? Ambazonians have to take the advantage that for a very long time, we've been trying Albert Einstein's words. When you repeat an election or repeat an experiment over and over, the same experiment over and over and over and over, and you're expecting different results, it is always impossible. Number two, we have been fighting the same enemy in the same land using the same strategies without much more of a difference. But of course, we've come to a stage of what we call power parity with La Republique du Cameroon and Ambazonia. Nothing moves, nothing gains. We are not winning, we are not losing. We are standing at that power parity and we need some breakage. So how do we get that breakage? There is something happening in neighboring La Republique that can affect us, the security of Ambazonia. One thing we always have to put in our minds is that we care about our own security. If I'm living in a neighborhood and there is fire in my neighbor's compound, I should be worried if that fire can cross over into my own home. I should be very worried. If I'm living in a neighborhood and I have kids in my house and I have a kid in my neighborhood or just closer to me, my next door neighbor, a kid who has been in jail a couple of times, who has been in prison, whom everyone knows that he has a very poor criminal, he has a very poor record, I should be worried about my son interacting in that neighborhood, especially when that kid is around. Or I should be worried about my son playing outside, especially when that kid is outside. If I'm living in a neighborhood where my neighbor is insecure, I should be worried about my security as well. If I'm living in a neighborhood where my neighbor's house is constantly being attacked, of course I should be worried about my own house being next. La Republique du Cameroon is our neighbor. There is no way we can always or we can ever cut off La Republique du Cameroon from the map, because we have three neighbors. La Republique du Cameroon to the east, we have Equatorial Guinea to the southeast, to the southwest, and we have Nigeria to the west. So we have three clear neighbors, but this is how we have to interact with them. We know that La Republique du Cameroon is a problem and La Republique made us into our elections. So this is how we have to go about it. We have to support what is going on in neighboring La Republique du Cameroon and put our main enemy against our own enemy. Canto is not your friend. Canto is not your friend. Literally, as we speak, we have to support the lesser of the evil to fight the major evil. In fact, what we call bandwagoning. Sometimes in international politics, you bandwagon, not because you are stronger, no, it's because you are coalescing all the weaker powers to fight the major power. Sometimes in international politics, we call what they call passing the buck. We are passing the buck to Canto to fight neighboring La Republique du Cameroon. We have to bandwagon. We have to create that alliance. Or if you don't want to go into alliances building, you have to just bandwagon with your support on that to fight La Republique du Cameroon. Mr. Paul Biya. These are the intricacies. Mr. Biya has always been in power. He jailed all the leaders that we are looking up to, Mancho, BBC, and the rest that I will not call names. There's a long list of those. He jailed them and he gave them at least 11 years in jail. 11 years in jail is so long a time. Mr. Biya wants to go for re-elections. If Mr. Biya goes for re-elections and becomes the president, of course, it means Mancho and the rest will still be in power for the next 7 more years and 3 years plus. Now, the next person who is coming to power, just to put it in a very simple analogy, have you ever found yourself where you're moving from one house to the other, or you're transferring your things from one house to the other? If you're moving from one house to the other, you would often want to clean that house first. You don't want to move into someone's mess. If you're in the United States and you want to move into a new home, this is what happens. They often take off the carpet of the old home, of the old tenant. They take all the carpet and replace with a new carpet. Any president who wants to come to power, of course, wants to clean Mr. Biya's mess. By cleaning Mr. Biya's mess, you're doing one thing. You don't want to align with what Mr. Biya has been doing wrongfully. We have every beacon of hope that Mancho BBC and the rest will be released should there be a change in the presidential term limits or whatever is going on in La Republique. Should there be a change, we have every beacon of hope that all the prisoners will be taken out. That is our cry, and that is our cry till today. One of the reasons why we've skyrocketed our hate for Mr. Biya is because he is jailing our leaders, and they are all fathers and husbands to wives who have found themselves as widows, in quotes. We are very certain that the next person who comes to power would first of all release all those people in jail, because of course I don't want to inherit someone's problems. I don't want to inherit your disease. I don't want to inherit your fire. I don't want to inherit your rain. Of course, I want to set a good record for myself. So we are very hopeful on that note. But the problem here comes. Camto himself has worked for La Republique du Cameroon for a very long time. The same La Republique that has crushed us, marginalized us, put us in a state of quagmire. The same Camto came out from that La Republique, and don't expect him to come out different. Never expect him to come out different. The only difference between Camto and Mr. Biya is that Camto wants to become president. That's it. Previously, he had probably had never voiced it that he wants to become president. But now it is very clear that Camto wants to become president. And if Camto becomes president, that is it. That's the only difference. But here is the clear fact. Camto has no difference with La Republique du Cameroon or with Paul Biya, because they have all worked for the same government and they have all marginalized the same Ambazonians. If you want to look at it from a geographical perspective, Camto is a Bamileke, and Bamilikes are considered the 11th province. It is the only beacon of hope for the Bamilikes, also known as the marginalized people in La Republique du Cameroon, to shape the election by standing strong for their Camto and using all their tycoons like Kwiferu, Foku, and the rest to flank Camto with a huge support. Because this is the only time the Bamilikes in neighboring La Republique will ever be recognized or be given a legitimate voice in that particular country. So here is the hook. From everywhere you look at it, Camto has won with a huge victory, and of course, he would become the president of neighboring La Republique du Cameroon. But what can we benefit from Camto, and what limits can we put on Camto? The first thing, and the only thing I see that we can benefit from Camto, is that all our leaders in jail will be out. Because he doesn't want to inherit the Ambazonian problem that has become a pain in the ass of so many leaders. He doesn't want to even to inherit it. Of course, all our leaders will be out. The second thing that I think that would happen is that Camto would faces in public and promising hell to any La Republic agent. I have the absolute hope that Ambazonians would keep on the status quo while expecting to still benefit from the release of their leaders in neighboring La Republic, which has been a major cry. I have the hope that even if Kamto comes to power, of course, let him sit and not even negotiate. We are not negotiating our independence, but dialogue on the terms of international relations between these two countries. I have the hope that if we put up a fight in neighboring La Republic, it's going to be Paul Biya versus the rest. I have the hope that if we keep up with meddling into the elections in neighboring La Republic, it's going to be a fight between La Republics, and it's going to demilitarize the entire Ambazonia. In that state of chaos, we can prop up or can step up our game and get what we want to get. This is the only time ever that we can build on this get what we want and defend ourselves. As simple as it is. There is no other way and any other time in history of La Republique du Cameroon or Ambazonia that will have this clear path to go through. There is no other time. There is no other time in La Republique du Cameroon that will give us this advantage to crack them, beat them, and take over what we want to get. This is the time we have to think strategically. When I hear people saying, oh, Ivo, the election does not concern us, it concerns you. The election does not concern you, and La Republique is in your own country. Why don't you go to their own country and cause the same problems? As simple as it is. I don't mean to talk much, but I think if I want to take much of your questions, I believe this particular edition was very much specific, talking about the elections and not to everyone. If you want to ask your questions, please go on straight up and I'll answer your questions. I have just about 5 more minutes left. Yes, John Silver says, therefore, the important issue now is to step up our ground game and also psycho infiltration. Of course. Psycho infiltration is very important. War is not only about the physical, it's about the mental. We've been seeing pictures of people like Ambazonians who have been killed on the streets and the rest. For how long are we going to keep spreading pictures? Oh, Ambazonians have been killed. Oh, we express our sympathy. We express our sorrow. We express our sorrow. Oh, we are crying. We are sharing. We are sorry. We are not supposed to be sorry in a war. We have to step up our game. Of course, we already understand that in a war, there would be what we call collateral damages. That's a fact. That's a fact. Oh my God, let me see. In a war, there'll be collateral damages. So that's, sorry about my phone being there. In a war, there'll always be collateral damages. So that's a fact. It's not new to us whether we have people who've been killed or not, or people who've been, it's always clear. In a war, there will be collateral damages. So at this particular point, we should focus on ourselves, on how we can up our game, cause confusion in the enemy's camp, put the two enemies to fight themselves. The election is an opportunity for us to let us capitalize. Of course, we have to capitalize on that. There is the important thing now is to step up the ground game and also psycho infiltration. Yeah, of course. Okay. General, we are really guerrilla or a regular army? That's a good question. Someone says, General, are we really a guerrilla or a regular army? We are a guerrilla. We don't have a standardized army. We don't have what we call conventional mode of operations. We don't have a conventional army. We don't have a structured army where we have the president, or we have the commander-in-chief, we have the generals, we have this. Ambazonia, but for today was what concerns La République du Cameroon and how we can get in. Thanks for watching, and please do have a nice day. Someone, let me take up this last question. Someone says, when you say La République du Cameroon is important, La République du Cameroon election is important, why then do we refuse to vote? When Russia